period. Whereas now it looked a bit different. So I'm a thinker, so I kind of try to weigh up everything, and I know the club very well. Maybe that's not a good thing because you see everything and think everything and feel it. I was concerned that we would be able to get to exactly what we want, but it's hard to predict going in. But I never felt, and sometimes you sit there and you say, this is a 3-year project, we might be able to win the league in 3 or 4 years. Inside, I didn't think that. I was like, week by week, let's see where we get to.
Who is the decision maker? Who makes that decision? That's the manager, that's not the manager. Who makes that call at Chelsea?
What, the owner?
Roman makes the calls, is it?
Yeah. I mean, you don't always get it direct, but yeah, the owner. And I think you respect that, and I've always respected him. I wouldn't be sitting in the comfortable position I'm in now with the period I had at Chelsea without him in the first place. And he makes that decision, And to be fair, if you look back in the period, he's made some good decisions.
Does the phone stop ringing for Marina?
Yeah.
What was the turning point where you thought, this is not right?
In the second year when we went to Arsenal and got beaten, I knew that good feeling I mentioned before had gone. Once that perception flips, your back's against the wall straight away.
You've had a year at Derby, you've got comfortable probably with the players, you've built your confidence in terms of working with the team. You then go onto the training pitch, or the first time you meet the Chelsea players. What's different?
Level, obviously. Again, no disrespect to Derby, but it is what it is. In Chelsea, you come into a team full of internationals, 20 odd of them. Yeah. And so the level was up, which brings a different breed of player, different breed of person. They challenge you more, I think.
From the outside, looking at that first year, it looked like it was the most likeable I felt Chelsea had ever been. One, maybe it's because you're the manager, but secondly, because there was a transfer ban. You'd brought through young players. Chelsea had this most unbelievable academy, but not really brought through young players. It looked like you were really happy. It looked like things were perfect. Did that suit you, that transfer ban in that first year, just to get sort of what would be a group of young players in? Also, the fact that you had stability. You didn't have who you're signing, you didn't have who's Frank going to bring in. Yeah. Are his signings a failure? Are they a success? Was it more simple for you in that first 12 months?
Maybe. If I go back in time, I'd opt for no ban, because I felt that when I came in that there were 2 or 3 positions that we needed to improve. And also, you're a manager that comes in, you kind of set the tone of what you're doing by bringing in players of a certain type. And so to not have that was, I'll go back, I would take that option. But I understand what you're saying. It definitely helped in terms of feeling. I felt that people kind of looked at it with a different eye, and it felt different probably on the inside as well. And it's hard to call as a manager. It definitely, people like Mason Mount breathes energy into it. But then you have the flip side of that is a senior player that's not playing because of Mason, and then you have to deal with those things. So there were the same challenges behind the scenes, but definitely, generally, I think it did. A sort of political or an aesthetics from outside, like you're saying, it probably helped.
You mentioned before that players challenge you more at Chelsea because they're better players. Who would those players be? Who would those characters be, in a good way, like you say, in the dressing room, the leaders?
Experienced players, leaders, Aspie, Jorginho, Giroud. Players that have been around the block, and you have to respect that. I think as a modern manager, I think the more you can listen to the modern player and give them some form of ownership over it, I think you get better kickback from it. I think you have to. So the easy thing for me to be was to come in and go, no, I'm the boss, shut up you lot, I'm going to come in and show you my stripes. But I always try to listen to how they might want to set up a press, something on a set play, whatever it is. And they need to know you're the boss, don't get me wrong. But there was a different feeling of challenge from the players in a good way. I remember I was that player, myself. I remember me and JT were the challenge managers for fun. About if we were doing shape like 11 against none, like this is rubbish. Now every manager does it, and it's the norm. Do you know what I mean? So the game moves on.
You've had a really good first season. You finished top 4, but one of the sort of big issues that emerged during that first season was the club had spent 75, 80 million on a goalkeeper, Kepa. Yeah. And you then put Caballero in, part way through that season. Did that bring a pressure from above in terms of what you're doing with our big investment? Did that cause a problem for you?
No, it didn't. As I said, my communication with upstairs was always good. When you're aware of a £70 million goalkeeper that you take out of the team, you know that it's not a simple decision. So probably with Kepa, he was having a tough time. There's no bones about it, do you know what I mean? In the first season, I think he'd say that himself, and from the conversations we had, he was very sort of open. It was a tough time for him, and that position is different to every other position on the pitch because you're getting it all the time, and the lack of confidence is going to hit you harder than anything in that position. So I tried to have open conversations with him, and I got to the point where I felt like I just had to make a change. There was no feeling of pressure from above, is what I'm trying to say, but it becomes very high profile when you do it, and there's that tag on that price tag on a player. But he was having a tough time, and for that reason, not say he had to come out of the team, it sounds a bit dramatic, but I had to make a decision.
And at the start of the next season, was the goalkeeper always a target? Did you always say, I want a goalkeeper? Were the club resistant to that, or were they supportive of bringing a goalkeeper?
No, they were supportive of that. Again, I don't think I'm being harsh here on Kepa, because I think he's a talented goalkeeper, and he had a tough year when I was there for whatever reason, but I felt that it was a position that we could improve. You know, Mendy was the result of that, who's obviously been fantastic since he's been at the club.
And at the start of next season, the club spend a lot of money on Werner and Havertz and players like that. Were you happy with the transfer window? Were you happy with the players that were signed?
Yeah, I was. As I say, it was very joined up, which I was happy with because I'd never managed it.
How influential were you in that process in terms of the players coming? Could you have a veto on it? What would happen if you said no, I don't want to bring him in, and they said I want to bring him out? How would that work at Chelsea?
It never happened in that way, but I would say that I would probably had that veto, to be honest. In that first year, whilst we were transfer banned, we were having conversation about what players we wanted to bring in the summer, and we obviously brought in a fair few players, but I was never out of the loop on that. It was never one where I could sort of say, they did this behind my back. I never had that, because it was very open, the scouting department there with Peta. You know, Timo was a big one because Liverpool had one of them, Manchester United, I think we were in. We knew there were 3 or 4 other big clubs. So when I had the conversation with Timo, I knew I had to be on my game to try and get him to come. Yeah. From the year before, I knew that I hate stats too much, but our XG, we should have scored more goals, so it felt a really crucial part of it. Same talking about Edu at the other end. I was happy with it. Thiago Silva was a no-brainer. When he came up, I was almost like rubbing my hands together and go, yes, please, you know, free transfer. This fella who's been one of the best centre-backs in the world for a while, and everything I heard from everybody else was that about his character, which proved right as well. So the balance of it was right. I mean, listen, I think if you look back, you might sort of say Thiago was one we bought, you just go, bang, he's going to be an absolute fit. With Timo and Kai, there was clearly going to be adaptation issues. And I know that from being in it because, you know, they were probably shocked at the speed of training. They were shocked at the physical demands of the game. I remember Eden Hazard's first year at Chelsea. It turned out to be one of the best players the club's ever had. Yeah. In the early days, in pre-season, you look at him and go, he's strolling around, to be fair to Eden. He had an incredible talent, but any player, pretty much any, other than the odd few, are going to have that. And I think Timo and Kai probably had that in the early days. Kai had terrible COVID as well, which set him back quite a lot. But in terms of the signings, I was happy. Ben Chilwell was a big one that I wanted. It's something that I had actually sort of seen as a left back. I wanted a player of his qualities.
Did everything change at that point in terms, obviously first year, you know, in some ways because of the transfer ban, the fact you had young players in the team, it was a little bit of a honeymoon. Did you feel like it completely changed in the second season, the sort of way in which people reported to you, asked you questions, the sort of media, everything? Did it feel different?
Yeah, it did. And
unfairly at times?
It's just what it was, and so much of football, the main bulk of it is what you do at the training ground, what you do as a squad, what results you get. But then there's a huge part of it is perception, you know, and how people perceive you. Like, he's absolutely not trying to blow my own trumpet, but I got in the top list of managers for Manager of the Year when Jurgen Klopp won it after my first year, and we'd come fourth. Chelsea managers don't normally get that. The next year, you know, I came fourth because people kind of understood that it had been a tough year, so they give you that credit, you know, and I was pleased with that personally. But the next year, once that perception flips, your back's against the wall slightly straight away. It's tougher, and when you're working on the ground and you can see Timo's getting used to the game, Kai's getting used to the game, we've got a big squad, we're leaving out players. We needed the squad to be for me, less at that point. And don't get me wrong, they went on to win the Champions League. It sounds a little bit...
Was it causing you a problem, the size of the squad, and trying to get them all in?
It's tough, yeah, because you had 3 left-backs, only one can play, generally, and 5 centre-backs. And Fikayo, who had been brilliant for me at Derby, had been very, very good for us in the first year at Chelsea. And I could feel that he was going to be a good centre-back for Chelsea for years to come, but he's in that kind of developing age where you will come out of a Chelsea team at 21 when there's that sort of competition of internationals. But when you've got 5, it's Fikayo or it's Rudiger or it's Christensen. 2 of those are at home every game. And it's not nice, and you can't bullshit players that, okay, I'm leaving you at home, but don't worry, you'll be back next week, if that's not the case. No. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have wanted that as a player, and it's really hard. And there's obviously a skill to it at times, but the squad was big, and it's tough. And as time goes on, the new manager's there now, he can make his changes, and you can maybe try and trim that. That's just how I felt at the time.
In terms of sort of that second year when you were out on the training pitch with the players, did you feel like, you know, because you had a really good start to the season, didn't you? Did you feel like you were in control, like everything was moving well, the idea was being received well by the players, and that you were on the right track? Yeah,
I did, and I'm always, I'll say the pessimist, I'm always ready for something around the corner, but at the same time, when you look back, I think we were 16, 17 unbeaten going into December. We beat Leeds at home, played well, beat Seville 4-0 in Seville, and that was with a team of 8 changes from the league team. So, and it was a really good feeling of teams winning, teams playing, and then the next day, you know, when you get the ones that haven't played, it's a dangerous session but it was really happy, and players were playing, and it was right, and we were feeling really good, 16, 17 unbeaten, as I say. And then come end of December, we lose some games, and obviously that can change pretty quick.
What was the turning point where you thought, this is not right, this is not going well? That moment, is there a moment you remember, a day, a game, a meeting?
We went to Arsenal on Boxing Day and lost and played poorly. There hadn't been that many times I could probably say to you in my time there at Chelsea where I could kind of come away and go, we were off it today, you know, and that kind of miles off it. A couple of times in the first season, went to Sheffield United and got beaten, but they were kind of, you could certainly put that down to probably the youthfulness of the group and normal inconsistencies that come with it. In the second year we went to Arsenal and got beaten pretty well. I knew that good feeling I mentioned before had gone. Could see it in the performance, you know, and then we had City the next game. And at Chelsea, it's understandable, I'm not crying my eyes out, but you go and lose a couple of games on the bounce like that and people start talking about it straight away. So I could sense the feeling of that, and, you know, I think we lost 3 games in 7, and at the end of January I left.
Does the phone stop ringing for Marina? Does the tone change?
Yeah, yeah, I think it does naturally, and I get that.
Did you feel it was coming? You know, or did it come as a shock on the day where you were told?
I could feel it. I was sort of being told some things that it might happen.
What sort of things?
Rumours. You know, but I mean...
You mean from outside or from inside?
Yeah. But, you know, again, I don't want to sound like I'm relying on
they were approaching other managers or...
Yeah, but that, I mean, maybe that's normal. And I think Chelsea is such a club and it's had huge success with it, but it changes managers. So it doesn't take long for, you know, for people to jump on that ship. So it would have been stupid of me to just listen to that and absolutely get... Yeah. But, you know, I'm not silly. So you listen to those things and you just keep working.
Just tell us about the moment where, you know, your phone call, the message, and it's happening and you are going to be told and you get that feeling it's coming.
Well, we'd beaten Luton in the Cup, FA Cup, 4th round or whatever it was. And then it was the next morning. I got a message actually from Bruce Buck, the chairman of the club, saying, can you move training and come and meet us in the boardroom?
Fancy coffee.
You know, that first message, you kind of just wake up, I wonder what, someone flick on Instagram or something.